It might look like that I have an obsession with war, but I have an obsession with history.
For 27 years, high school teacher Tom Clark has shared his obsession with his students at Lake Central High School in St. John, Indiana.
You're an official researcher. You're not only reading about history, what are you doing? You're writing it.
In what is likely a one-of-a-kind project, a generation of Mr. Clark's students have tracked down the families of Indiana's war dead and created an archive of their mementos, their letters, their stories of loved ones lost in combat and lives lived in grief. Mr. Clark, who in his 50s enlisted in the National Guard and served a year in Afghanistan, started his students looking for families of the 1,621 Indiana residents killed in Vietnam.
We'd call the families, we'd find the families, we'd ask permission to go out and talk to them. They were very willing to have us out.
The initial idea was to help his students understand the human cost of war.
Who was killed over there?
58,142. That's what the number you see for Vietnam casualties. You see that in textbooks. Anybody that would see that, it's a number. Even the wonderful, incredible Vietnam War Memorial, which has 58,000 names on it, that's incredible. But what we're doing, we're taking the numbers, we're taking the names, and we're putting a face to the names.
At the beginning of each year, he hands his students files with the names of Indiana boys who lost their lives in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. He encourages the students to use the internet, government archives, school yearbooks, whatever they can find that will lead them to the surviving parents, siblings, or children.
I don't know if it might be like a relative.
Look at that. You want to find a better photograph.
And then I'd get a lot of points.
Oh, I'll give you lots of points.
The result is a classroom full of memories, collected over decades.
The families from Indiana have given me their medals, their documents, their uniforms, but I think the thing that's most precious that they've given me are the letters. I have, in some cases, the first letter they wrote all the way to the last letter.
His students have discovered that their research helps the families find peace, especially those who lost loved ones in Vietnam, an unpopular war in which veterans often got a cold shoulder at home.
As I was growing up, we really didn't talk much about my dad. You would hear things, you know, how they were baby killers when they came back. So it was kind of like you just didn't mention it. It wasn't something, you know, that you were meant to be proud of.
Is there a difference today?
This is Angie Wagner, whose father, Marine Sergeant Terrence Smith, was killed in Vietnam when she was 4 years old.
This is a picture of my father, Terrence Smith. My dad was a Marine. He enlisted in the Marines before I was even born. It was 1968, I believe it was January 21st when he was killed. And he was in his foxhole and he was blown up by a grenade.
Mr. Clark and his students contacted Ms. Wagner's family back in the 1980s.
It made me feel really good that there was actually somebody out there who, you know, cared and wanted to know what had happened and still, you know, wanted to remember.
Now her own daughter, Allison, is one of Mr. Clark's students.
And then when we moved and I had him as a teacher, she was like, you of all people really need to understand the project and definitely take it to heart and do whatever you can to find any information because it means more to the families than you would think it does.
To date, we found a lot of families. We found 1,300 plus photographs of the 1,600, and it's monumental. It's touched them, it's touched my students, and it's touched me.
I had to take Mr. Clark's class. I wouldn't have a fulfilled high school experience at Lake Central if I didn't. My soldier was Homer Gettler, but everyone called him Banks. He was an all-star athlete, and he was actually drafted to play in professional baseball, but he also got drafted to go into World War II.
He came home the last time, but before he came home, he told his mom and dad to buy me an engagement ring. Mm-hmm. And then on her birthday, November 18th, I went over to their house for dinner, and she gave me the ring, the engagement ring then.
He was killed in France. So over the summer, I went to track down this cemetery or this memorial in St. Avoid, France. I had talked to Binks's fiance at the time, and she told me that she wanted me to bring back a stone from France of his grave.
Okay, my dear.
Okay, so basically what I wanted to show you was when I went to France, I kind of like kept a bunch of journals.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of like read you what like I did. When I got back to Gettler's resting place, I decorated his tomb with stones, and on top of the cross, I placed some stones in the formation of a heart with a broken stone in the center. I have the other half of the stone and plan on giving it to Betty when I return. So that's kind of, I want to give that to you now.
I told you she was a sweet girl.
But yeah, so anyways, this is
Oh my goodness.
all the stones I collected. I thought like for a way so you could kind of feel like you had been there or you were a part of it. I got like this stone right here.
I see that
And
little stone.
I just kept throwing it at the ground until it cracked.
And then,
So I put one half of it here and the other half is on his
Left.
grave. Yeah, so I'll give that to you. So you can always feel like you were there.
making me go back so many years. Like I'm young.
I very, very distinctly remember the day of his service, my mother sitting in a chair, all of us kids around my mother, and his casket sitting across from her. I'm just seeing my family members crying and upset. And there was a puff of smoke that I saw, and then when I turned around, his casket was gone. When I saw the smoke was after the 21 gun salute that they did. So of course my attention went to that. And then when I turned around, it was just like he had disappeared. And that was, you know, my recollection as a 5-year-old. I received a phone call fall of 1989. And Tom Clark identified himself as a teacher at Lake Central High School. What I had always been told by my family was just various stories. Nobody had a concrete, consistent story as to, you know, what happened that day. He was killed. It really wasn't any information. You know, Mr. Clark and his students, they just opened up another door that would have never been open had he not did what he did, got the students involved, because there was a lot of work. You know, there was 5 years that went by that, you know, we heard of all of these medals that my father had earned, but we had never received. When Mr. Clark told me the story of how my father received the Silver Star, he was able to give me those last hours of my father's life. Just in the notes of what they put down as his earning of the Silver Star, they mentioned 4 soldiers were taken out, and when he went back in, it was hit and he didn't make it back out. The one thing I've always thought about is, I wonder if those 4 soldiers that he pulled out of that bunker, if they made it out and back home. I always wondered about that.
If it's not too much to ask, could you kind of tell us where you were, what was going on the day you found out that?
Yes.
Right, having a dinner party.
Yeah, we were having a dinner party. We had all the cul-de-sac neighbors over. We were cooking
Shish kebab.
shish kebabs. And I look out the window and I see a couple of people walking up. As I open the door, I realize, oh heck, you got a chaplain and you got a non-commissioned officer come up. And these guys are here to tell you the worst thing that's going to happen to you. And it's tough. I look at everybody and I tell everybody, I'm sorry, party's over, you have to leave. And I scream to Patty, I yell, Patty, get out here now. So she walks out, and as I'm scurrying everybody out the back patio doors, they ask what's up, and I had to tell them. And that was a tough day. Very tough. Tough questions.
Yes.
The visit with Mr. and Mrs. Novacek was very nerve-wracking at first because I have never interviewed a family who has recently lost their son or daughter in the military service. I think all of us, when we were first there, thought they weren't really going to want to talk about it, but surprisingly, they were all very open with the discussion. They told us so many stories about what he was like and really brought him back to life in our eyes.
David, you put on a brave front. He'd walk up to me, give me a hug. He'd say, Mom, I'll be back in December. He goes, I'll be here before Christmas. He goes, have me my turkey dinner ready. Yep.
Meeting David Novacek's family was a different experience for me because I was finally the one in the interview seat. My grandpa was one of the first ones that they started when they did the project. My mother lost her father in Vietnam. She was 4. So, how are his kids?
Well, Kylie's 2.
Right.
She doesn't understand.
Yeah.
They tell her that Daddy's up in heaven, and what she thinks she does now, she likes to take balloons and send them off up to the sky.
You're doing something for somebody else who doesn't get to talk about their son or their husband or their father.
It's a very rewarding experience knowing that you are trying to help find some family and be able to help them as well.
The project isn't about us, it's about the families and it's about the people who died for the country.
Their stories, their lives. Why did they go? What did they do there? It's more than just a number. It's like real history. It's a story of somebody that went and served this country. That's why I do it.